So Aurangzeb rose to power after defeating his father Shah Jahan, and in the controversy there were four sons of Shah Jahan. So the four sons were Dara, Shuja, Murad and Aurangzeb, as we all know. And Aurangzeb became victorious by defeating his remaining three brothers. In the struggle, two of his brothers were killed and sent his father to captivity, and Shah Jahan remained later in captivity for next 8 years, where he finally died. Aurangzeb rose to power in the meanwhile in 1658. Now, Aurangzeb's historical time has been important. He was also known as Alamgir, and he was the one who started to conquer South. Now, his whole lifespan could be bifurcated simply into two sections. One is the period from 1658 to 1681, and this was his conquest in the north of India. The second period is the period from 1681 to 1707, and this was the period in the South India, predominantly the Deccan area. One of the important things to note here was he focused highly in the Deccan area during his last 25 years of life, and as a result, his power in the north started to weaken. Despite of the fact that he was one of the very learned men, his policies were not that successful as have been quoted. If we talk about his life, he was one of the strict disciplinarian person, fond of playing veena. According to him, he was one of the orthodox Muslims from Sunni sect and believed that no wine music should be played in the court, and as a result he banned singing in the court. However, he allowed two things. He allowed the instrumental musics to be played, and also Naubat, the royal band, was allowed. During his time, largest number of books on classical Indian music in Persian were written. As per one of the Islamic legends, it is believed that he was living a very simple life despite of the fact that his empire was an empire of huge wealth and goodness. His lifestyle was very simple. He believed that he is a messenger from God and his ideas should remain very simple, and all his earnings should be earned by his own deeds. So in his leisure time, he used to write copies of Quran by hand and also did embroidery on the prayer caps that were used, and these prayer caps were sold to the nobles of his court and other people around at a very reasonable price. The earning that he got by selling the prayer caps and writing the copies of Quran by hand was used to fulfill his basic needs and his basic lifestyle, and later whatever remained even from that earning was spent for the purpose of charity. So that was how Aurangzeb led his life, despite the fact that if we focus on his coming to power, we have seen how he had been ferocious in terms that he killed two of his brothers and sent his father to captivity. But despite of that, he was an adherent believer of his sect, and therefore he led a very simple lifestyle. But during the time of Aurangzeb, revolts around India started to rise. Now, what were they focusing on? First of all, the non-Muslims, the tax were revised. Jizya was reintroduced, and this increased the discontentment among the people. Also, the land tax which was collected from the farmers increased from 1/3 to half, and this made the common farmers and the agricultural laborers upset about it. Even during the time of flood or droughts, the farmers were not given support. So there was an internal revolt among the people that started. The revolt was also seen among the sects like Jat, Bundelas, Satnamis. Then we have the Sikhs, Marathas, Rajputs, and we would talk about Sikhs, Marathas and Rajputs again as we move further. But as we said, he lived a very simple life and had his own earning, and therefore he was also known as Zinda Peer. So his another name was Zinda Peer, very important to know. So those were some of the important things that we understand why, despite of his good beliefs, good policies that he wanted, there was unrest among the common people. The Zagirdari crisis also was growing during this time, which again created further troubles for Aurangzeb. Now coming on to the clashes with Sikhs, Marathas and Rajputs. We'll move on to those one by one. So let's first begin with the clash with Sikhs. Now, the ninth Guru of Sikh, who was Guru Tegh Bahadur, was the person who criticized the religious policies of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb was not happy with this and he arrested Guru Tegh Bahadur and martyred him at Chandni Chowk in Delhi. Already, the relations were very strained between Sikhs and the Mughal Empire after the execution of Guru Arjan Dev during the time of Jahangir, when the Prince Khusro's revolt took place, which we have covered in our section on Jahangir. Now, since the relations were not that good, or we could say the relations were strained with Sikhs, since the fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev, during the time till the ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur's arrest and his martyr, we have seen that the relations further deteriorated. Now, the son of Guru Tegh Bahadur, Guru Gobind Singh, became the 10th Guru. Now, he adopted his father's policy and organized Khalsa. Now, since Khalsa was organized by Guru Gobind Singh, open wars started between Sikhs and the Mughal armies. Aurangzeb and his successors, his later successors, the later Mughal successors after Aurangzeb, were relatively very weak and therefore had to face a hard time after death of Aurangzeb. So at that point, the power of Sikhs started to increase and Sikhs started to become a political power. So this was the relations with Sikhs. Coming on to Rajput. Now here again the story is far interesting. Four important persons that we would be discussing. The first is Raja Jai Singh. Now Raja Jai Singh and Raja Jaswant Singh were kept away from the court of Delhi. Now Raja Jai Singh was sent for a war with Shivaji and finally he he asked Shivaji after the Treaty of Purandar to come to Agra and have a settlement for the Maratha-Mughal rivalry. However, when Shivaji went there, Shivaji was insulted and they tried to arrest him, but somehow he escaped. This thing was a mark on Jai Singh, considering that despite Jai Singh who was one of the loyal journals, he was suspected and insulted that because of him Shivaji was able to escape and therefore relations with Raja Jai Singh started to deteriorate. Similarly, after the death of Raja Jaswant Singh in 1678, his son Raja Ajit Singh came to power. Now when his son was coming to power, he was detained in Delhi and his estate of Marwar was annexed by Mughals. So Raja Ajit Singh's Marwar estate was annexed by Mughals. Knowing this, Durgadas Rathod, a brave Mughal, supported Raja Ajit Singh wholeheartedly, and at that point Rajputs from the state of Mewar, that is the region of Udaipur, the states of Marwar, that is the region of Jodhpur, and some other states of Rajput, some other regions of Rajput joined hand to have a war against Mughal, and this war continued for many further years. Later on, in 1681, Rana of Mewar, that is the region of Udaipur, signed a treaty with Aurangzeb, and as a result, Aurangzeb started to divert his forces towards south. However, Ajit Singh did not agree for any treaty. As a result, after the death of Aurangzeb, Ajit Singh rose to power and Marwar became an independent state, and Ajit Singh became the ruler of Marwar after the death of Aurangzeb. So we have seen the later Mughals were getting weak. Sikhs rose to power. Here in the region of Rajputana, Rajputs rose to power, and coming south, we have the story with Marathas. So the conflict first of all started between Mughals and Marathas in the region of Bijapur, where both of them had the eyes, and both Aurangzeb and Marathas were trying to have control over Bijapur. At this time, Shivaji's power was rising. Now, Aurangzeb by all means was wholeheartedly determined to defeat Shivaji. But because of the rising power of Shivaji and Shivaji capturing many of the forts that were captured already by the Mughal army, there was a tough competition. So, Aurangzeb under him led one of his most loyal generals, Sheshta Khan, and Sheshta Khan and Shivaji had a fight. Now, Aurangzeb, when he sent Sheshta Khan to defeat Shivaji, he failed, and Shivaji was at that time able to capture the region of Surat. As Surat was captured, most of the forts created by Mughals were also seized by Shivaji. Now, what happened? Again, when Shivaji captured the region of Surat, Raja Jai Singh was sent to suppress, as we have already discussed this in the story with Rajputs. So, Raja Jai Singh was sent to the region to have a fight with Shivaji. At this point, Shivaji failed and had to sign the Treaty of Purandar. So, Treaty of Purandar becomes very, very important in 1665, where Shivaji lost, and Jai Singh was able to convince Shivaji to come to Agra to have a mutual dialogue between the Mughals and the Marathas. Now, when Jai Singh invited him to the court in Agra, when Shivaji reached Agra, rather than being entertained, he was insulted and arrested. Shivaji, by some means, was able to escape. Now, once Shivaji was able to escape, he gave this a strong thought that by all means Mughal army should be crushed, and he re-attacked the region of Surat, reoccupied the forts which were occupied by or which were lost under the Treaty of Purandar to Mughals. Now, why Shivaji was successful is again important. Shivaji was successful because of his technique of guerrilla warfare. Now, his technique of guerrilla warfare is important because he was well versed with the terrain. Now, since he was well versed with the terrain, hiding behind the terrain and attacking from behind became very, very easier and a kind of obvious thing for the team of Shivaji. So, therefore, Marathas gave a tough time for Aurangzeb and predominantly the later Mughals who were there. So, this was about the rise of the powers of Sikhs, Rajputs and Marathas. Now, if we look into the detail of the empire, as you can see, the region marked in blue here is the region that was laid down by Akbar, and the region which is marked in the purple here is the region which was added solely by Aurangzeb. Now, Aurangzeb, as we can see, added whole of the South India. His last 25 years of his life he spent in Deccan area, conquering and annexing the regions of Bijapur and Golconda, which were not annexed till the time of Shah Jahan. So, Bijapur got annexed in 1686, and Golconda was annexed in 1687, the very next year, to Bijapur. Aurangzeb was not able to totally crush the power of Marathas, and after a long struggle with Marathas, he finally lost his life in 1707 in Aurangabad, in present-day Maharashtra. His Deccan policies were more or less impossible to deal with, and this was one of the reasons that fastened the decline, we could say, of Mughal Empire. Now you might wonder why this fastened the decline. Now there were numerous reasons why the Mughal Empire declined. First was the policies of Aurangzeb. Under the policies of Aurangzeb, we can say he followed orthodox religious policies, reimposed Jizya, which was the tax on non-Muslims, and therefore brought in lot of discontentment among the people. Also, there were numerous rebels, mainly the Sikhs, Rajputs and Marathas, as we already discussed. Then his policy of Deccan annexation was important. Nearly 25 years he spent in the Deccan, and in this process he had to maintain a huge army, spend a lot of money on the army, and as a result his treasuries started to become empty. So empty treasuries are linked to his unsuccessful Deccan policies, and also he was slowly losing the control in the north because it was difficult to have a control over such a vast region, as we have seen in the previous section. Also, his later successors were incompetent, were very weak, constantly fighting among themselves for getting a seat to power or a throne, and therefore had to face huge issues. During this time, we have also seen that there was rise of new powers. New powers, as we already understood, the independent states were growing, and also foreign invasions. Now, foreign invasions, two major invasions that we need to understand. One was Nadir Shah and the other was Ahmad Shah Abdali. What was the difference? Nadir Shah was the one who attacked the region in 1739, and Ahmad Shah was from 1747 to 1767. Now Nadir Shah was the one who took away the Peacock throne at Red Fort, which was created for Shah Jahan during his tenure, and this along with Kohinoor diamond was taken to Iran. So Nadir Shah basically invaded, looted India. Then next was Ahmad Shah Abdali. Ahmad Shah Abdali gave a crushing defeat to Marathas during what? During the third battle of Panipat. So important to note, the third battle of Panipat was not fought with the Mughal Empire. So third battle of Panipat was fought between Ahmad Shah Abdali and the Maratha power, and Maratha could not regain the past glory ever after the third battle of Panipat that was held. So those are some of the major developments that we have seen during the Mughal period, and those we could say were some of the predominant reasons for the decline of Mughal Empire. Also, little later to it, we have seen that East India Company started to come to India, and we had Mughal power being replaced slowly and gradually by East India Company, which we would understand in our upcoming history lectures. So that was about how Aurangzeb's life, Aurangzeb's annexations and Aurangzeb's policies have been important. Despite being a well-read person, his ideas were not practical, and therefore he was not one of the very popular leaders who could keep his kingdom strong, and dissociation of the kingdom started after Aurangzeb.